The pregnancy test was positive. I stared at the plastic stick on our bathroom counter, my heart hammering against my ribs. 2 pink lines that would change everything. 2 pink lines that weren't supposed to exist. David, Emily's voice floated up from downstairs. Have you seen my phone? I need to call Natalie back. Natalie. Just hearing her name sent a wave of nausea through me that had nothing to do with morning sickness. I quickly stuffed the test in my pocket and splashed cold water on my face, trying to compose myself before facing my wife. Coming. I called back, my voice cracking slightly. 3 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be in this situation, I would have laughed in their face. My marriage to Emily had always been rock solid, or so I thought. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5. And while we had our ups and downs like any couple, there was never any doubt about our commitment to each other. Until Natalie came into the picture. Underscore. It started innocently enough. Emily and Natalie had been best friends since college, though they'd drifted apart in recent years as our careers took us to different cities. When Natalie moved back to town 6 months ago after her divorce, it seemed natural that she and Emily would reconnect. I was happy for my wife. She'd always spoken fondly of Natalie, and I knew she missed having a close female friend nearby. The first time I met Natalie was at a dinner party we hosted to welcome her back. She was tall and elegant, with dark hair that fell in loose waves around her shoulders. Unlike Emily's bubbly personality, Natalie was more reserved, with a quiet intensity that made you lean in when she spoke. I liked her immediately. She was smart, witty, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me as more than just her friend's husband. Emily's told me so much about you, she said, refilling my wine glass. Apparently, you're some kind of financial wizard. I laughed, embarrassed. Hardly. I just crunch numbers for a living. Don't let him fool you, Emily said, sliding an arm around my waist. He's being modest. David just made partner at his firm. Impressive, Natalie nodded, her eyes meeting mine. I've always been terrible with money. Maybe you could give me some pointers sometime. It was such a casual comment, the kind of friendly overture people make at dinner parties all the time. I had no way of knowing it was the first thread in a tapestry of complications that would soon unravel our lives. Over the next few months, Natalie became a regular fixture in our home. She and Emily would have coffee in our kitchen, go shopping together, or spend evenings drinking wine and catching up while I worked late or gave them space. Occasionally, I joined them, and I grew to enjoy Natalie's company too. She was going through a difficult time after her divorce, and Emily was determined to help her rebuild her life. She's really struggling, Emily confided one night as we got ready for bed. The divorce wiped her out financially, and she's starting over from scratch at 40. That's rough, I said, genuinely sympathetic. Is there anything we can do to help? Emily hesitated, twisting her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit she'd had since I'd known her. Actually, there's something, but it's complicated. What is it? I asked, sitting down beside her on the edge of our bed. She took a deep breath. Natalie wants to have a baby. I blinked, unsure how to respond. Okay, that's great, I guess. But what does that have to do with us? Emily's eyes met mine, and there was something there I couldn't quite read. She's running out of time, David. She's 40, recently divorced, and doesn't have the money for fertility treatments or sperm banks. She's afraid if she waits to meet someone new, establish a relationship, and then try for a baby, it might be too late. A cold feeling began to creep up my spine. Emily, what exactly are you saying? She reached for my hand, her fingers cold against mine. She asked if you would help her, if you would be the donor. I pulled my hand away, standing up abruptly. You can't be serious. She wants me to father a child? That's insane. Not to father it. Exactly, Emily said quickly. Just to help her conceive. She wouldn't expect anything from you in terms of parenting or financial support. The baby would be hers alone. And how exactly does she propose we do this? I demanded, though I already knew the answer. Emily couldn't meet my eyes. The traditional way. She says clinical insemination is too expensive, and this would be more likely to succeed. I stare at my wife in disbelief. Let me get this straight. Your best friend wants me to sleep with her to get her pregnant, and you're okay with this? It's not about sleeping with her, Emily said, her voice rising defensively. It's about helping someone we care about fulfill her dream of becoming a mother. She doesn't have anyone else to ask, David. So, she asked her best friend's husband, and you're actually considering this? I've done more than consider it, Emily admitted quietly. I've told her I'd talk to you about it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The conversation felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. This is crazy, Emily. You're actually asking me to cheat on you with your best friend. It wouldn't be cheating if I'm okay with it, she argued. It would be helping, a gift, from both of us. A gift, I repeated flatly. And what about after? We just go back to normal? Pretend it never happened while watching her raise a child that's biologically mine. We'd work through it, Emily said, reaching for me again. I know it's a lot to ask, but Natalie has been there for me through everything. When my mom died, when I lost my job, she's like family to me, and she'd be an amazing mother. I shook my head, too overwhelmed to continue the conversation. I need some air, I muttered, grabbing my jacket and heading downstairs. That night, I slept in the guest room, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. Part of me was furious that Emily would even suggest such a thing, that she would be willing to share me in such an intimate way. Another part understood her loyalty to her friend. Emily had always been fiercely dedicated to the people she loved. But this crossed a line I never imagined we'd face in our marriage. The next morning, I found Emily at the kitchen table, her eyes red-rimmed from crying or a lack of sleep. Probably both. I'm sorry, she said as soon as I walked in. I shouldn't have sprung that on you like that. It was unfair. I poured myself a cup of coffee, buying time before responding. Why is this so important to you? Honestly, Em, I need to understand. She was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember when we first got married and we talked about having kids? I nodded. We decided to wait, focusing on our careers first. Then Emily had health issues that made pregnancy risky, and we'd agreed to revisit the topic later, possibly considering adoption. But somehow, later never came, and the subject had gradually faded from our conversations. I can't have children, David, she said softly. We both know that, and I've made peace with it. But Natalie, she's always wanted to be a mother. When her ex-husband left her for a younger woman, he took that dream with him. She doesn't have time to start over. There are other options, I pointed out. Sperm donors, adoption. She can't afford those options right now, and she doesn't want a stranger's DNA. She wants someone she knows, someone with qualities she respects. Emily looked up at me, her eyes pleading. She trusts you. We both do. I set my coffee down, untouched. I need time to think about this. Of course, Emily said quickly. Take all the time you need. But time didn't make the request any less bizarre or the decision any clearer. For weeks, I turned it over in my mind, examining it from every angle. Emily didn't bring it up again, but I could feel the question hanging between us, an invisible thread of tension that stretched tighter with each passing day. Then came the dinner, just the three of us. I should have realized it was a setup, but I was caught off guard when Emily announced she needed to make an emergency run to the pharmacy for her migraine medication, leaving Natalie and me alone. She's not very subtle, is she? Natalie said with a rueful smile, after Emily left. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. I guess not. Natalie set down her wine glass, her expression turning serious. David, I want you to know that I would never have asked this if I had any other option. And if you say no, I'll completely understand. No hard feelings. Why me? I asked, the question that had been burning in my mind since Emily first brought up the idea. Natalie considered her answer carefully. Because you're kind. Because you're intelligent and healthy. Because Emily loves you, which means you must be a good man. She paused. And because I trust you not to complicate things afterward. This would already be complicated, I pointed out. Yes, she acknowledged, but less complicated than other options. I don't want a relationship right now. I'm still recovering from my marriage falling apart. But I do want a child before it's too late. And I'd rather that child share DNA with someone I know and respect, rather than a stranger from a catalog. The sincerity in her voice was compelling. And if I was being completely honest with myself, there was something flattering about being chosen for this purpose. Still, the idea of crossing that boundary seemed impossible. What about Emily? I asked. How can she really be okay with this? Natalie's expression softened. Emily is the most generous person I know. She sees this as a way of giving me something she can't have herself, a child with a man she loves. She reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. She told me once that knowing she couldn't give you children was one of her deepest regrets. That struck me like a physical blow. Emily and I had discussed children early in our relationship, but when medical complications made it risky for her, we'd shelved the idea. I'd told her I was fine with it, that I married her, not a potential family. But had she been carrying that guilt all these years? I need to think about it, I said finally, just as I heard Emily's key in the lock. The next few days were a blur of internal debate. I thought about what it would mean physically, emotionally, ethically. I thought about the child who would result from this arrangement and what role, if any, I would have in their life. I thought about Emily and whether her encouragement was genuinely selfless or hiding some deeper issue in our marriage. In the end, what tipped the scales was a conversation with Emily that I never expected. If you decide to do this, she said one night as we lay in bed, not touching, I want you to know that I've thought about every aspect of it, and I'm truly okay with it. How can you be? I asked, turning to face her in the darkness. There was a long pause before she answered. Because I love Natalie like a sister. Because I know what it's like to want something so badly and have it out of reach. And because she hesitated. Because part of me feels like this is the closest I'll ever come to having a child with you. Natalie's baby would be connected to both of us, to you biologically, and to me through her. Her voice broke on the last words, and I felt a surge of emotion, love, confusion, sadness, all tangled together. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as she cried quietly against my chest. Okay, I whispered into her hair. I'll do it. Underscore. The arrangement, once agreed upon, was clinical in its execution. We decided on a specific week when Natalie would be ovulating. Emily would stay with her sister for a few days, giving us privacy. There would be no romance, no seduction, just a straightforward transaction between consenting adults. At least, that was the plan. The reality was far messier, both physically and emotionally. When the designated evening arrived, I found myself standing on Natalie's doorstep with a bottle of wine I'd brought for liquid courage, feeling like the world's most awkward date. Hi, she said, opening the door. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Nothing provocative or suggestive. I appreciated the effort to keep this as non-romantic as possible. I echoed, holding up the wine. I thought we might need this. She smiled, the tension breaking slightly. Good call. Come in. We drank the wine and talked about mundane things, work, the weather, a book she'd been reading. Anything to avoid discussing why I was really there. Eventually, though, we couldn't ignore it any longer. This is weird, isn't it? She said, setting down her empty glass. I laughed, relieved to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Extremely weird. We don't have to do this, she said quickly. If you've changed your mind, I completely understand. Have you? I asked, studying her face. She shook her head. No, I want this, but only if you're still comfortable with it. Comfortable wasn't exactly the right word, but I'd made a commitment. To her, to Emily, and somehow to myself. I'm here, aren't I? What followed was both more awkward and more intimate than I'd anticipated. There was no passion, but there was a kind of tenderness. Two people engaged in an act that usually signifies love, but in this case represented something else entirely. Hope, friendship, and a bizarre sort of loyalty. Afterward, we lay side by side, not touching, staring at the ceiling. Thank you, Natalie said quietly. I nodded, unable to find the right words to respond. What do you say to your wife's best friend after you've just had sex with her in an attempt to impregnate her? Emily and I hadn't discussed this part. The aftermath, the moment when the deed was done but the results still unknown. I should probably go, I said, sitting up and reaching for my clothes. Of course, she agreed quickly, pulling the sheet around herself. I dressed in silence, my mind already racing ahead to how I would face Emily. What would I tell her? How much detail would she want? The thought made me vaguely ill. At the door, Natalie stopped me with a hand on my arm. David, no matter what happens, I want you to know how much this means to me. What both of you have given me. I'll never forget it. I nodded again, still searching for words that wouldn't come, and left. The drive home was a blur. Our house was empty, as planned. Emily wouldn't be back until the next day. I showered immediately, as if I could wash away what had just happened, what I had just done. But the memory clung to me, along with a growing sense of unease. Had I just made a terrible mistake? When Emily returned, her first question, asked with an attempt at casualness that didn't quite succeed, was, "How did it go?" "Fine," I said, unable to meet her eyes. "It's done." She nodded, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Good. That's good." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unasked questions and unspoken concerns. "Do you want to talk about it?" she finally asked. "Not really," I admitted. "Do you?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I don't think I do." And so we didn't. We moved around each other carefully in the days that followed, both pretending that nothing had changed while feeling the shift in our relationship like a physical presence in the room. I waited for Emily to bring up the possibility of a second attempt if the first didn't take, but she never did, and I was too much of a coward to ask. 2 weeks later, Natalie called Emily with the news. She was pregnant. One shot, one success. The relief I felt was overwhelming. I wouldn't have to do it again. Emily was ecstatic, immediately throwing herself into the role of supportive friend. She went with Natalie to her first doctor's appointment, helped her research prenatal vitamins, and started planning a nursery design. It was as if, by proxy, she was experiencing the pregnancy she could never have herself. I kept my distance, unsure of my role in this strange new dynamic. Was I supposed to be involved? Emily seemed to think so, constantly updating me on Natalie's symptoms and progress, inviting her over for dinner, including me in conversations about the baby's future. But it felt wrong, like we were playing house in the most dysfunctional way possible. Then came the morning sickness. Not Natalie's, but Emily's. I found her vomiting in our bathroom, pale and shaky. Are you okay? I asked, concerned. Do you have a stomach bug? She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, looking oddly guilty. I'm fine. Just something I ate, probably. But it happened again the next day and the next. And she was tired all the time, falling asleep on the couch by 8 o'clock, napping on weekends. I began to wonder if the stress of our unusual situation was affecting her physically. Maybe you should see a doctor, I suggested after finding her dozing in the middle of the afternoon. I'm fine, she insisted, but I could see something in her eyes. Fear? Guilt? I couldn't tell. A week later, I came home early from work to find her on the phone, speaking in a hushed, urgent tone. I don't know what to do, she was saying. I never thought this would happen. How am I going to explain? She stopped abruptly when she saw me, her face draining of color. I have to go. I'll call you back. Who was that? I asked, setting down my briefcase. Just Natalie, she said quickly, too quickly. Checking in. I knew she was lying. The tension in her voice, the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Something was wrong. Emily, I said firmly, what's going on? She sat down heavily on the couch, as if her legs could no longer support her. I'm pregnant, she whispered. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? How is that possible? The same way it's always possible, she said with a weak attempt at humor. We've been having sex, David. It just happened. But her doctor had told us years ago that pregnancy would be extremely unlikely for her due to medical issues, and potentially dangerous if it did occur. We'd been careful at first, then gradually less, so as we accepted the reality of our situation. But your condition, I know, she interrupted. It's a miracle or disaster. I haven't decided which yet. I sat down beside her, my mind racing. How far along are you? She hesitated, twisting her wedding ring again. About 8 weeks. I did the mental math quickly. 8 weeks meant she had conceived around the same time I had been with Natalie, which meant you were already pregnant when you sent me to Natalie, I said slowly, the realization dawning with horrible clarity. Emily's silence was all the confirmation I needed. Did you know? I demanded, standing up again, unable to sit still with the surge of anger and confusion rushing through me. When you asked me to do that, did you already know you were pregnant? No, she protested immediately. I found out after it was already done. And you didn't think to tell me? To tell Natalie? We could have stopped this whole thing before it got so complicated. I was scared, she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. The doctor always said pregnancy would be risky for me. When I found out, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. So you just let me go through with it? Let me sleep with your friend while you were carrying my child. The betrayal felt enormous, like a physical weight crushing my chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I paced the living room, trying to make sense of this new reality. My wife was pregnant with our child. Natalie was pregnant with my child. 2 women, 2 babies, both mine. It was a nightmare scenario I couldn't have imagined in my worst dreams. Does Natalie know? I asked finally. Emily shook her head. Not yet. I was just talking to my sister about it when you walked in. I ran a hand through my hair, my thoughts spinning out of control. We have to tell her. I know. Emily agreed, miserably. But how? Sorry I loaned you my husband to get you pregnant when I was already pregnant myself. She'll never forgive me. She won't be the only one. I muttered, too angry to soften the blow. Emily flinched as if I'd struck her. What does that mean? I didn't answer directly. I need some time to process this. I'm going out. I grabbed my keys and left without waiting for her response, needing physical distance from the situation. I drove aimlessly for hours, replaying the events of the past few months in my mind, trying to understand how we'd ended up here. Had Emily manipulated me? Us? Was the whole thing some kind of elaborate test of my fidelity, with the most ironic outcome possible? Or had she genuinely wanted to help her friend, only to discover too late that she was already carrying the child she thought she could never have? By the time I returned home, it was past midnight. Emily was asleep on the couch, her face tear-stained even in slumber. Looking at her, my anger softened slightly. Whatever her reasoning, I knew she hadn't intended for things to turn out this way. I covered her with a blanket and went upstairs to bed, though sleep eluded me for most of the night. In the morning, we faced each other across the kitchen table, both exhausted, both uncertain of the path forward. "We need to tell Natalie," I said again, more gently this time. Emily nodded, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. "I know. Today. We'll tell her today." The pregnancy test was positive. That morning, finding the test hidden in Emily's drawer had been the final piece of a puzzle I hadn't even known I was solving. It confirmed what I'd begun to suspect, that Emily had known about her pregnancy earlier than she claimed. The date on the box was from before our arrangement with Natalie, not after. "David," Emily called again from downstairs. "Did you hear me? I need to call Natalie. Have you seen my phone?" I slipped the test back in her drawer and took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation to come. The truth would come out today, one way or another. And nothing, not our marriage, not our friendship with Natalie, not the futures of the two innocent lives now growing inside the women in my life, would ever be the same. Coming, I called down, my voice steadier this time. As I descended the stairs to face my wife, I couldn't help but wonder, in trying to give someone else the gift of life, had we inadvertently destroyed our own? I guess we were about to find out.